Every plot has a mastermind, until the mastermind realizes they were never in charge. That's exactly what just happened here. Your ex thought they were the player. Turns out they were the piece. Somewhere between ego and manipulation, they got recruited into a twisted plan designed to break you, expose you, or make you fold. But life just flipped the script. And now they're the one losing sleep, pacing the floor, replaying every conversation, every coincidence, every strange thing that didn't add up back then. It's funny how karma doesn't knock politely. It kicks the door down holding receipts. For a while they thought they were the one calling the shots. They laughed, they bragged, they joined the smear campaign thinking it was all fun and games, until the truth surfaced like a shark fin in still water. And now they realized they were used as bait in someone else's hunt. Psychologists say guilt and betrayal activate the same pain centers in the brain as physical injury. So right now, your ex's conscience is limping, their pride's in a wheelchair. They finally see that what they called teamwork was really entrapment. And you, the one they thought was the victim, ended up being the revelation. Because when a chosen one walks away, the illusion collapses, and suddenly everyone sees who was truly pulling the strings. So sit back, because this story isn't just about revenge or regret. It's about revelation. And trust me, when the truth finally hit your ex, it hit like divine lightning with a side of poetic humor. Number one, they thought they were in control, but they were just the bait. That's the part that stings the most. Realizing they weren't the one holding the power, they were being used by it. Your ex believed they were the mastermind behind the drama, the one making the moves, pulling the strings, calling the shots. But the truth is, they were being manipulated by forces and people who knew exactly which buttons to press. Their pride, their ego, their desire to win against you. That's what made them the perfect pawn in a game they never understood. They thought they were punishing you, but they were really performing for an audience they didn't even see. Someone or something saw their weaknesses long before you did. The jealousy, the insecurity, the need for validation. Those weren't just emotional flaws, they were openings. And through those openings, the enemy walked right in. Suddenly, your ex was saying things, doing things, and believing things that weren't entirely their own thoughts. They were being fed a script, and they played it with conviction. They didn't realize how much spiritual warfare hides inside ordinary relationships. How a person can become a vessel for energy that wants to destroy light, peace, and divine order. When they tried to hurt you, they thought it was just emotional revenge. But what they were really doing was channeling an energy that wanted to see your faith broken, your focus scattered, your confidence shattered. That's why everything they did seemed so personal, because it was never just about you. It was about silencing what you carried. Now that the truth has surfaced, it's hitting them in waves. They see the manipulation for what it was. They're starting to connect the dots, the sudden influence from certain people, the strange timing of events, the way they were encouraged to act out against you like it was some kind of mission. They're realizing they were used as a vessel to attack someone who was actually sent to help them heal. That's a brutal awakening, and now they're left with the fallout. No validation, no allies, just the echo of their own actions. Because once the puppet realizes the strings were real, it's too late. The show's already over, and the audience has moved on. Number two, they helped build the trap, and then fell right into it. It's wild how people think they can plot against someone who's divinely protected and still come out clean. Your ex teamed up with the wrong crowd, people who hated you, envied you, or just couldn't stand your light. They thought they were aligning with power, with influence, with people who understood them better than you ever did. But what they were really doing was digging a pit they'd eventually tumble into head first. and now they're sitting in the very chaos they once tried to create for you. At first, it all looked like control. They were confident, smug, convinced they had figured you out. They whispered, exaggerated, lied, and plotted, all to make sure you were the one exposed, humiliated, or dismissed. But the universe doesn't work that way. The same energy you throw out always circles back, and this time it came back swinging hard. Every little trick they used against you started to backfire one by one. The people they teamed up with turned on them. The fake allies who encouraged their betrayal started gossiping about them too. The trap became a revolving door of embarrassment. What they didn't understand is that spiritual integrity always protects itself. You didn't have to lift a finger. You didn't have to clap back or seek revenge. The energy did the job for you. Because when someone attacks what's pure, they automatically trigger their own undoing. They thought they were exposing your flaws, but all they really did was reveal their own darkness. Every secret move, every lie, every attempt to make you look small became a spotlight on who they truly were. Now they're sitting in silence, realizing how easily they were manipulated. They see how those same people who hyped them up when they were against you have now vanished. Nobody's backing them up. Nobody's defending them. The same voices that once cheered for their betrayal are now laughing at their downfall. That's the part that hurts the most, the betrayal within the betrayal. They helped build the trap, thinking they were building power. But now that the mask has fallen off, they finally see it for what it was, a setup, disguised as a plan. And the only person left in the ruins is the one who thought they'd never fall. Number 3, their fury isn't remorse, it's realization. They're not angry because they miss you. They're angry because they finally see the full picture, and it's eating them alive. For so long, they believed they were in control of the story. They thought you were the naive one, the emotional one, the one who would never recover. But now that the truth has surfaced, they realized they weren't the mastermind. They were the puppet. They were manipulated, played, and used as a tool to destroy someone who was only ever genuine with them. That's not an easy truth to live with. The anger they feel now isn't sadness, it's shock. Their pride is shattered because they see how blind they were. They were convinced that turning on you was a power move. They thought they were choosing freedom, independence, or even justice. But now they understand that they were being fed lies and half-truths by people who wanted to see you both divided. And in trying to hurt you, they became the very weapon that wounded themselves. That's a hard mirror to face, knowing the biggest enemy in the story wasn't you. It was the version of themselves that believed the manipulation. You've probably noticed how people like that rarely apologize right away. It's not because they don't know they were wrong. It's because their ego can't handle the humiliation. They don't know how to deal with the fact that you, the person they tried to break, ended up being the only one who saw everything clearly from the start. That truth burns. It keeps them up at night. It makes them defensive, angry, and desperate to rewrite history, so they don't have to face the fact that they were a pawn. Their rage is the mask covering their shame. Deep down, they know they played themselves. They realize that the love, patience, and loyalty you gave them was real, and that they traded it for illusions and approval that meant nothing. They're mad because the story didn't end the way they imagined. You healed, you rose, you turned pain into purpose. Meanwhile, they're stuck in a loop of regret, trying to cope with the fact that they destroyed something pure, not because they wanted to, but because they were too blind to see they were being used all along. Number 4, the spiritual contract has expired, and they can feel it deep in their bones. For a long time, your connection wasn't just emotional, it was energetic. They were drawing from your peace, your patience, your light. Every time they came around you, even when they were pretending not to care, they were absorbing your calm and stability. You were their silent source of balance in a life full of chaos. But when that divine link got severed, everything they were borrowing from you vanished. And now their spirit is reacting like someone going through withdrawal. That's why they can't sit still. That's why sleep feels foreign and peace feels impossible. When a chosen one detaches, it's not like a breakup. It's a spiritual eviction. You removed access to a frequency they didn't even realize they were depending on. The truth is, they weren't in love with you as much as they were addicted to your energy. They mistook divine nourishment for control. They thought they could mock, drain, and disrespect you while still feeding off your light. But the moment God said, "That connection is over," the spiritual umbilical cord was cut, and they were left gasping for the same energy they once took for granted. They don't understand why nothing feels right anymore. The things that used to excite them now feel dull. The distractions that once filled their emptiness don't hit the same. They feel drained, but it's not from you. It's from the absence of you. That's the side effect of mishandling divine energy. Once you lose it, nothing else can replace it. You were the peace in their storm, but they mistook your stillness for weakness. Now they're realizing your silence was sacred, not submissive. When God ends a spiritual contract, He doesn't send a warning email. He just shifts the atmosphere. Suddenly they can't access you emotionally, mentally, or spiritually. Their messages don't land the same. Their presence no longer affects you. They can sense the wall, and it terrifies them because they've never felt powerless before. The connection that once nourished their ego has turned into a void they can't fill. And now they're learning the hardest truth of all, that losing a chosen one isn't just emotional loss. It's spiritual famine. Number 5, they mocked your discernment until it exposed their darkness. They laughed at your instincts, dismissed your warnings, and twisted your intuition into an insult. You were labeled too sensitive, too emotional, or crazy, all because you sensed what they were trying to hide. But now, the very things you tried to warn them about are unfolding right in front of them. Every paranoid comment you made was actually prophetic. Every uncomfortable feeling you couldn't explain was a divine nudge trying to protect both of you. And while they laughed, you were quietly reading spiritual signals their logic could never comprehend. People who live in deception hate discernment because it exposes what they've built their lives on. They prefer illusion because truth threatens their control. When you began calling out the inconsistencies, the manipulation, or the hidden agendas, it wasn't that you were wrong. It was that you were right too soon. And being right too soon is the most dangerous position in a room full of liars. You were tuned into frequencies they refused to acknowledge, and that made you their threat. They weren't mocking you to insult you. They were mocking you to silence what they didn't want to face. Now that everything's coming to light, they're realizing you weren't reacting, you were receiving. That feeling they thought was emotional instability was divine sensitivity. Your spirit was warning you of energies that their flesh was entertaining. And because they couldn't interpret what you could feel, they chose to make you the problem. It's always easier to ridicule what you don't understand than to admit you're being exposed. The irony is that your discernment was their last lifeline. If they had listened, they would have avoided the disaster they're now drowning in. But arrogance blinds, and mockery always precedes downfall. Now they're standing in the very truth they once laughed at, realizing that your intuition wasn't madness, it was mercy. What they mocked was the same gift that could have saved them. And that's the most painful part. They didn't reject your emotions, they rejected divine guidance delivered through you. You weren't being dramatic, You were being obedient to what your spirit saw. And now, their laughter has turned into silence, because the crazy one turned out to be right all along. Number 6, they didn't just lose you, they lost spiritual protection. While they were busy thinking they had the upper hand, they had no idea that being in your life came with divine insurance. You weren't just love, you were covering. You were the silent shield that kept certain attacks, betrayals, and disasters from touching them. Every time they mocked you, they didn't realize grace was buffering their life because of your presence. When they left or betrayed you, that covering lifted. And now they're standing in spiritual weather they were never built to handle. It's not coincidence that their peace left when you did. Their plans started collapsing, their relationships started falling apart, and things that used to come easily suddenly began resisting them. They call it bad luck, but what they're really experiencing is exposure. Exposure to the consequences of their own energy without the divine filter you unconsciously provided. When you carry light, the people connected to you are protected by proximity. But when that light withdraws, darkness doesn't waste time filling the space. That's not punishment, that's spiritual physics. They never knew how much they were spared because of you. The arguments that never escalated, the losses that somehow turned into lessons, the opportunities that showed up just in time. That wasn't luck. That was grace working through your energy. You were the bridge between them and divine order, but they thought they could disrespect the bridge and still cross safely. They underestimated what it means to be connected to a chosen one. Now they're learning that divine connection isn't replaceable. They can try to copy your calm, mimic your habits, even imitate your prayers. But what they can't replicate is the anointing that came with your presence. You were a gatekeeper of peace, and when they closed that gate, chaos walked in. Their sudden string of misfortunes is not random. It's reality without divine favor. They used to think you were dramatic for talking about energy, protection, or alignment. Now they're seeing the proof firsthand. Doors that once opened for them are now sealed. People who used to help them have turned cold, and deep down, they know the truth. They didn't just lose a relationship. They lost access to a covering that was never theirs to begin with. Number 7, the people who used them are now afraid of them. The same crowd that once pulled their strings is suddenly walking on eggshells, praying they stay quiet. They never expected your ex to wake up. They thought they had them completely under control, loyal, blinded, and too proud to ever admit they were manipulated. But awakening changes everything. Once your ex saw how they were played, that blind loyalty turned into silent fury. And the ones who once called the shots can feel that shift in energy, and it terrifies them. Your ex was never supposed to question anything. They were supposed to stay obedient to the script, keep spreading lies, keep playing their part in the downfall of someone divine. But truth has a funny way of breaking through delusion. Now every time they see those same manipulators, their stomach turns. The guilt has transformed into resentment because they realize they were never respected, just used. Those people never cared about them, only about what they could get from them. And now, that realization has created a dangerous kind of silence, the kind that keeps liars awake at night. The manipulators are panicking because they know how much your ex knows. Every secret meeting, every fake story, every fabricated rumor. Your ex was there. They witnessed things that could destroy reputations and expose the whole agenda. Now that their loyalty is cracked, the power dynamic has shifted. The same people who once treated your ex like a weapon now see them as a ticking time bomb. They don't know when guilt will overpower fear or when anger will force them to talk. So they're scrambling to cover their tracks, whispering about damage control while pretending everything's fine. This is what poetic justice looks like in real time. They built their empire on deceit, and now it's crumbling from the inside. Your ex has become the reflection they can't manipulate anymore, a reminder of their own corruption. What they created in arrogance is now turning on them in truth. And though your ex was once the pawn, they now hold the most dangerous position of all, the one who knows everything and has nothing left to lose. Number 8, they realized you were the test they failed. It wasn't just a relationship. It was a divine setup to reveal their true character. You were sent into their life as a mirror, not a mistake. Everything about your presence was meant to awaken something higher in them. Honesty, humility, compassion, accountability. But instead of rising to meet that frequency, they chose ego, manipulation, and pride. You didn't come to destroy them, you came to develop them. Yet their inability to recognize the sacred in you became the very reason they fell. Every chosen one carries an atmosphere of elevation. Being close to you forces people to confront their shadows. You didn't have to preach or lecture. Your energy alone exposed their intentions. It showed them where they were fake, selfish, or spiritually asleep. That's why they felt both drawn to you and triggered by you. Part of them wanted your light. Another part hated the reflection it cast on their darkness. When they failed to handle that duality, they turned against you, not realizing they were only fighting the part of themselves that didn't want to grow. Now life has put them in replay mode. The same kind of betrayals they inflicted on you are now happening to them. The same disrespect they dished out is returning from unexpected places. That's not karma being cruel. That's God teaching through repetition. When a person fails a spiritual test, the universe doesn't punish them. It gives them endless retakes until they understand the lesson. But the painful part is every retake comes with heavier consequences. They thought losing you was just losing a person, but it was really losing their promotion in spirit. You were their opportunity to evolve, to learn how to love without agenda, to walk in truth instead of manipulation. They didn't realize that loving a chosen one is an exam you can't cheat on, because the energy itself grades your heart in real time. Now they're sitting in the aftermath, watching cycles repeat, wondering why peace keeps slipping through their fingers. The truth is simple. They met divine opportunity and mistook it for ordinary love. They failed the test not because they didn't love you, but because they refused to learn from you. And until that lesson sinks in, life will keep giving them pop quizzes in the form of pain. Number 9, their karma is psychological, not just situational. Life hasn't necessarily fallen apart around them. It's collapsing inside them. The real punishment isn't the loss of things. It's the constant replay of their own choices in their mind. They're haunted not by spirits, but by clarity. Every word they twisted, every manipulation they justified, every betrayal they told themselves was no big deal, now echoes back with meaning they can't unhear. The same lies they once used to sleep at night are now the very thoughts keeping them awake. When truth finally reveals itself, it doesn't need thunder or chaos. It simply rearranges your peace. Their mind has become the courtroom, and memory is the judge. They're being forced to sit through the reruns of every scene where they had the chance to do right and didn't. And now, what used to make them feel powerful only makes them feel small. That's the invisible justice at work. Not public humiliation, but private awareness. No audience, no applause. Just a restless conscience that won't turn off. They once assumed karma meant car crashes, job losses, or sudden financial hits. But the deeper truth is, the most precise karma happens internally. It's when the same mind that once justified wrongdoing now turns against itself. It's when the laughter they used to mock you turns into silence because there's nothing left to laugh about. They don't realize it yet, but what they're experiencing is spiritual correction disguised as insomnia, anxiety, and emptiness. The mind becomes the battlefield when the soul finally wakes up. The worst part? There's no escaping it. You can move cities, change numbers, block people, but you can't block yourself. Their thoughts follow them everywhere, whispering what they can't undo. That's why they look fine on the outside, but feel hollow on the inside. Every quiet moment becomes a confrontation. Every victory feels meaningless because their spirit knows it was built on deception. You don't have to wish them harm. Life has already delivered the perfect consequence: self-awareness without peace. They're living inside the echo chamber of their own actions, realizing too late that the mind doesn't forget, and the heart never lies. That's karma in its purest form. No flames, no chaos. Just the unbearable weight of knowing exactly what you did to someone who never deserved it. Number 10. They're furious because you're untouchable now. Everything they did was meant to weaken you, to confuse your mind, to break your spirit, to leave you questioning your worth. But instead of falling apart, you became something stronger than they ever imagined. You faced every emotional storm they sent your way and came out purified, not poisoned. And that's what eats at them. They didn't just fail to destroy you, they accidentally helped shape your transformation. Your healing rewrote the story they tried to control, and now they're stuck watching the version of you that no longer needs their validation or approval. They're angry because they can't access you the same way anymore. They used to know exactly which words could trigger you, what buttons to press, and what silence to weaponize. But now none of their tactics work. You've detached emotionally and spiritually, and their manipulation bounces off you like a dull blade. It's infuriating for them because their power depended entirely on your reaction. They were never strong. You were just empathetic. Once you stopped feeding the connection with energy and attention, they lost the illusion of control. You've become a mirror they can't distort. Every time they look at you, they see their own failure reflected back. You embody everything they tried to convince you you'd never become: confident, peaceful, stable, and self-assured. You've healed to a level where their existence no longer registers as a threat, and that's the kind of peace they can't sabotage. It drives them mad that they're still talking about you, still obsessing over your moves, while you're somewhere minding your purpose, untouched by their noise. What they don't understand is that you had to walk through your breaking point to become unbreakable. You didn't build your strength out of revenge. You built it out of survival. And now your calmness is their chaos. Your silence is louder than their insults. The same person they once pitied or underestimated has turned into living proof that divine resilience exists. They can't gaslight a mind anchored in truth or manipulate a soul aligned with God. So yes, they're furious, not because you hurt them, but because you healed beyond their reach. You were supposed to be the downfall they bragged about. Instead, you became the testimony they can't stop thinking about. Number 11. They saw how God defended you, and it terrified them. It wasn't lightning or thunder, it was timing. Everything they plotted started unraveling without you lifting a finger. Their lies began contradicting each other. Their alliances fell apart. People they trusted turned distant, while doors started slamming shut in their faces one after another. And the eerie part? It all started the moment they turned against you. That's when they realized you weren't just someone they hurt. You were someone heaven had marked. They tried to destroy your name, but somehow your reputation kept rising. They whispered lies in private, yet truth kept exposing them publicly. They expected to watch you crumble, but instead you elevated, calmly, silently, gracefully. You didn't fight back, you just stayed still. And that stillness wasn't weakness, it was divine strategy. Because when God takes the case, human defense becomes unnecessary. That's what they never understood. Silence doesn't mean surrender. It means heaven is now in session. They're not scared of you. They're scared of what's behind you. They saw evidence that God really does fight for his chosen. Every attempt to curse you backfired into their own chaos. Every scheme that should have succeeded ended in confusion. Their world became unpredictable the moment they tried to predict yours. That's not coincidence, that's consequence. You didn't have to lift a sword because your obedience was the weapon. And now they can't sleep in peace, not because of guilt alone, but because they know something bigger than them intervened. They can't explain why they feel exposed, why everything feels heavy, or why doors that used to open easily now refuse to budge. Deep down, they know it's spiritual, a kind of justice no human hand can manipulate or undo. God didn't just defend you, He made your story a warning. So yes, they're terrified, because they saw proof that destiny has sides, and they chose wrong. They underestimated divine protection and learned the hard way that some people aren't meant to be touched. You were never just a target. You were a testimony in progress. And now their fear isn't of losing power. It's realizing they provoked the one who gave it. Number 12. Their apology is coming, but it's too late. They've rehearsed it in their head 100 times, rewritten it in text drafts they'll never send, and hovered over your name more than they'd ever admit. But this isn't love tugging at them. It's guilt. They don't miss you. They miss the version of themselves they used to be when you still believed in them. What they really want is relief from the image burned into their conscience, the one where they were the villain in the story of someone pure. Now that truth has sobered them, they want to come back and make things right. But the energy has shifted. You're not standing where they left you. They still speak your name as if it holds access, but spiritually, the connection has expired. You're not angry anymore. And that's what unsettles them most. They can handle your rage. It meant you still cared. But indifference? That's a level of peace they can't compete with. The apology they're preparing isn't about healing. It's about rewriting history. They want to sanitize the narrative, to make themselves look a little less cruel and you a little more naive, because that's easier to live with. They want to believe they were confused, pressured, or misled, anything but consciously wicked. But the universe doesn't delete receipts just because someone suddenly feels bad. Forgiveness isn't a reset button, it's a release. What they'll never admit is that they thought you'd never recover. They were sure the damage was permanent. But now, watching you rise without resentment, without the need for closure, has become their silent punishment. You healed in a way that exposes their lack of growth. You moved on without theatrics, without revenge, without announcement. And that's what burns them the most. By the time they gather the courage to say, "I'm sorry," it'll sound hollow. Not because you're heartless, but because you've evolved beyond the frequency that conversation exists on. You've forgiven them, but not for them, for yourself. And in doing so, you made peace with something they're still running from. The truth that redemption without responsibility is just performance, and their stage is empty now. Number 13, their regret is public. Yours is sacred. You did your healing in silence behind closed doors, with no witnesses but God and your own reflection. You faced your pain without applause, rebuilt your spirit without validation, and found peace in solitude. Meanwhile, they turned your suffering into a stage play. They wanted everyone to see you broken, confused, and defeated. They wanted to be praised for moving on while you were still bleeding. But divine timing has a way of flipping scripts in a way no audience ever expects. Now the same crowd that once believed their lies is watching their downfall unfold in real time. The same people who laughed with them are whispering about them. The same energy they used to publicly shame you is now spotlighting their own chaos. And the irony? You didn't have to lift a finger. Life handled the exposure with poetic precision. That's not karma out for revenge. That's divine symmetry correcting imbalance. Your regret was private because it was holy. It refined you. It stripped you of illusion and taught you the power of quiet transformation. You cried, reflected, evolved, and ascended with grace. You didn't need an audience because your healing was never a performance. It was sacred work between you and God. Every tear became a seed for wisdom. Every scar became proof of endurance. And every silent night built the strength that now makes your peace unshakable. Their regret, on the other hand, is loud because it's desperate. It's not repentance, it's damage control. They're trying to manage perception now that masks are slipping and narratives are collapsing. They used to feed off being admired. Now they're being analyzed. The attention they once craved has turned into exposure. And what's beautiful about divine order is that it doesn't seek revenge. It simply reveals truth. You were hidden to be healed. They were exposed to be humbled. That's the balance. You went inward and came out renewed. They went outward and now have nowhere left to hide. You lost your pain in private. They're losing their facade in public. And in that contrast lies the ultimate justice. Not vengeance, not payback, but perfect holy symmetry. Number 14. They finally understand you were the mirror they couldn't face. You never had to expose them. Your presence did that naturally. Your love was pure, your intentions were clean, and that terrified them. Because when someone has built their identity on ego, manipulation, and masks, genuine energy feels threatening. You didn't judge them, you simply reflected truth. And that reflection revealed everything they tried to bury. Their jealousy, insecurity, and unhealed wounds. You became the emotional X-ray they didn't ask for, but couldn't ignore. At first, they mistook that reflection for attack. Every time you held them accountable, they called it criticism. Every time you spoke truth, they called it confrontation. They weren't at war with you. They were at war with what you made them see. You reminded them of the person they could have been if they had chosen healing instead of control. You represented the potential they abandoned, and that made you unbearable to be around. That's why they tried to silence you, shame you, or discredit you, because erasing you felt easier than facing themselves. But now that you're gone, the silence you left behind is deafening. There's no distraction, no scapegoat, no one left to blame. All that's left is the mirror, and it's still reflecting. They finally see that you weren't their enemy. You were their opportunity. You were the one person who loved them past their facade, who saw the soul beneath the dysfunction and still chose to believe they could rise above it. That kind of love doesn't come twice in a lifetime. They thought it was ordinary, but now they know it was divine. And that's what haunts them. Not your absence, but what your presence revealed. They finally understand that losing you wasn't just losing a partner. It was losing their reflection of truth, their last chance to evolve. When a chosen one exits, illusions collapse. Masks stop fitting. Their world doesn't feel stable anymore because you were the light that kept it from crumbling. Now that you're gone, they see everything clearly. But clarity without redemption is torment. Their punishment isn't your revenge, it's their realization. You were never the threat. You were the truth. And now, they'll spend a lifetime wishing they hadn't destroyed the only mirror that ever showed them who they really were. In the end, everything came full circle, just as it was meant to. Every betrayal that once felt like chaos was actually divine choreography. What looked like loss was really liberation in disguise. They thought they were orchestrating your downfall, but heaven was using their deception to build your discernment. You weren't broken, you were being rebuilt. You weren't rejected, you were being redirected. And now, as truth continues to surface, everyone who played a role in your pain is learning that God doesn't lose cases. He only takes his time. Your ex is now standing in the ruins of the illusion they helped create. The same hands that threw stones are now trembling with remorse. The same tongue that mocked your faith is now whispering your name in guilt. They finally understand that you weren't just another person. You were a divine assignment. They mishandled a chosen one, and that carries consequences words can't reverse. Every plot, every smear, every act of manipulation has ricocheted back, not as punishment, but as revelation. They're realizing that what they destroyed was never disposable. It was sacred. And you've risen from the ashes, not bitter, not vengeful, but wiser. Your silence became power, your healing became armor, and your peace became proof that divine justice doesn't always need witnesses. It just needs patience. You've become living evidence that when God defends his own, he doesn't just restore what was lost, he upgrades it. You now carry a peace they can't imitate, a glow they can't access, and a grace that exposes their guilt without you saying a word. So let them wrestle with regret. Let them face the reflection they once ran from, because what they now call karma is really clarity, and it's the one thing they can't escape. You've moved beyond their storyline. You've become the closure they'll never find. If this message spoke to your spirit, make sure you subscribe to the channel, like this video, and share it with someone who needs this reminder. Drop a comment below if you're walking in your peace after the storm, because your story is proof that divine justice isn't delayed. It's perfectly timed. God bless you.
In the aftermath of the Battle of Mont Gazard, the Kingdom of Jerusalem celebrates a most unlikely